Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for making this event happen. Special thank you to Christina and Alessia for organizing the event and for shining light on this very important issue of anti-SLAPP legislation once again. We do have, for the first time in history, an anti-SLAPP directive, which is a very important step forward, but there's a long way to go until we feel that we have at the level of each and every member state solid legislation in place to protect journalists and activists. All of this would have not been possible without the help and deep commitment of my colleague Tiemo, and I'm really grateful for that. The Libe committee had a small part in it, but he has carried the big battle. I will let him explain and give you details on this landmark legislation. Last but not least, we are all here in the European Parliament fully aware that without your support and your commitment and your involvement, we would not have had anti-SLAPP legislation. So I think it is quite obvious that we're first and foremost grateful to you and your efforts to make this possible. I'm now giving the floor to Tiemo. I would like to apologize because I need to run to the political group and speak about anti-money laundering legislation because we've just finished this package, and then I will come back and join you for the rest of the event. Thank you very much again. Tiemo, you have the floor.
Should I directly continue?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Ramona, for having us. So it's sometimes a bit difficult to get rooms in this parliament when at the same time there are group meetings, but you managed it. So I didn't. That's very thank you very much for making this happen. Also, thank you for organizing this event, and thank you very much for your interest in this file, and also in being active against the abuse of our legal systems. And I think that's the bottom line of an SLAPP. It's an abuse of a system which was created to protect the unlawfully accused ones, the weaker parts, and not to serve powerful individuals. And this is what happens if individuals are using SLAPP lawsuits. When we finished the negotiations with the Spanish presidency somewhere in the middle of the night, at first I wasn't so sure that we had done everything right. But we now had the time to, of course, read it again. We have the final vote, so I'm really convinced that we did everything possible with the majorities we had in Parliament, but also within the Council, to do this very first and important step. So for sure, you will find some weaknesses, some open questions in this regulation. What happens to cases where there is no cross-border element? Obviously, we have a lot of member states who said that they would, if they are going to transpose the directive into national law, that they would also cover purely national cases, which is a very important commitment. But we will, of course, see how this, if this happens. I think that this House has been very strong in its fight against SLAPPs. Also, our president, Roberta Metsola, as you know, has been very active. We wrote the first initiative report together, and I think it is, in the end, a success story. So I'll spare you with all the details I do have in my prologue, because you are aware of the situation, I think, better than I am. So just jumping directly into what is now part of our European anti-SLAPP law. So we do have a definition of cross-border cases in Article 4. As you may remember, the Council wasn't very happy about this provision at all and wanted to delete it. For us, the definition was always the crucial point, because it will impact how many cases fall under the scope of this law, and therefore how many defendants can resort to the safeguards. This definition we found now will indeed provide what I believe is very important legal certainty and reflect the nature of SLAPPs. It empowers national judges to assess the elements of a particular case in a flexible and comprehensive manner, including as to the means used to access or disseminate an act of public participation as such. For example, electronic means. And this was also a very intense fight. The Council, of course, didn't want to include it, but I think everyone is finding its information online nowadays. So it was really important for us to mention electronic means. I think this was one of the last points in the end where we then reformulated it to electronic means. And this includes obviously also information in the internet. So that was very important for us. So all in all, irrespective of the means of communication, you can be covered by this legislation, and this will broaden the understanding of how this notion should be interpreted by national judges. And I really do hope that for future legislation, this new interpretation will also help to broaden the scope. Then we, as the Parliament, we proposed a new article entailing an obligation for accelerated treatment of two key safeguards, namely the early dismissal or of manifestly unfounded cases and provision on financial security by the judges. Both have been added, as well as the need by member states to ensure the possibility for such accelerated treatment to other safeguards, such as provisions provided for in our exception 4, for example, penalties and awards of costs or compensation, all of which are meant as both protective and dissuasive measures. And this was, of course, also very political, very highly contested part of this law. We can also discuss it if you want. We added 2 new articles, also based on our negotiating mandate as the Parliament, on flanking measures regarding assistance, information, transparency, and data collection. This includes making existing legal and financial aid psychological support available throughout a single contact point at national level. We were told by SLAPP victims and organizations working on SLAPP files that access to information, access to support measures, be it financial or psychological, is very important, as people targeted by a SLAPP often are overwhelmed by its consequences. So we really spent some time in convincing the Council that we need these single contact points. Obviously, during the transposition and transformation, we do have to closely monitor if this really happens. Then also participation of third parties was important to us. Trade unions, NGOs, and other parties with a legitimate interest in support of the defendants can participate during the proceedings. As mentioned, we kept a strong wording on the award of costs, whereby defendants should be reimbursed on, and this is important, all types of costs they have incurred in regards to their legal defense and representation. And then we do have an article on penalties and or other appropriate, effective, proportionate, and dissuasive measures, like the publication of the court decision with reference to the right of compensation for harm suffered by the defendant, were provided in national law. You can imagine that this was also a very delicate issue. And finally, we have a set of measures to protect the SLAPP defendant from judgments linked to SLAPPs coming from third countries, notably the possibility to seek compensation for the damages and the costs incurred in connection with the proceedings in a third country. That's in Article 18. And finally, there was, of course, the long and important discussion on forum shopping, on the provisions of Brussels I regulation and Rome II. So as Parliament, we wanted to ensure that targets of SLAPP should not have to travel outside their domicile to remote third countries and pay unsustainably high fees to lawyers in foreign jurisdictions just because of a loophole in our private international law. We had in our position included a separate chapter on the private international law, creating lex specialis for SLAPP cases. We didn't manage it, surprise, surprise, to include this chapter in the final text. I think this was clear from the beginning that the Council would never allow that. But we now have a clear and written declaration from the European Commission committing to swiftly finalizing its review process of the Brussels 1A and Rome 2, which is, well, you could call it disappointing, but I'm still happy that the Commission publicly and in the text committed that they will accelerate this review process. And so I think in the end, knowing that we would not get a revision of international treaties within this piece of European legislation, we can still be happy that we do have this commitment. So I think I'll stop here. I think that in the end, this is really a step forward. Of course, it does have its flaws. We will certainly discuss it. But from the feedback we had from the stakeholders, especially so far, it was quite positive. So I do hope that you share this assessment, but if you don't, please let me know. Nothing to change now, but there will be a revision of this law in the future. So always try to be prepared for the next step. So I stop here and yeah, would like to thank you once again for having this, and especially for I think the training of the people at the ground in the courts, the lawyers. That's really important that SLAPP cases are recognized, identified, and then treated as SLAPP cases and not as any other kind. So it's a very important work, and I would also like to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much on behalf of the consortium and the project coordinator. I don't know if we have questions for MP Wolken. Someone also from the virtual assistant. Well, you will join us for until 10, if I'm not mistaken. So let's move forward. Before that, again, I want to thank you and thank you also MP Strugariu for supporting us in the organization of this event and giving us the opportunity to showcase what we have done and the main results that we achieved over 2 years of this project. We have a full pack agenda for a 2 hours event, so I will move forward. One last thanking to our guest speaker, Eleonora and Julie, who later share their views on the importance of promoting training activities, both for lawyers and prospective lawyers, legal professionals in general, with my colleague Christina in the panel session. So I will provide some information on the project and the main results of this project. I will ask Gabi to help me with the presentation, please. A first slide will be on some practical information. If it's the other one on the project. Perfect. PATFox is a co-financed European project that started back in February 2022 and will end next month, so February 2024. It has been implemented in 11 member states. You have the list here. So Spain, Germany, I don't want to forget any countries. So Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Hungary, Malta, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. And the good thing that it has been implemented by a consortium composed of 10 civic society organizations and 1 university. I think it's something that we need to underline now. The project was set up with the idea of raising awareness and knowledge about SLAPP, of course, and improving knowledge and skills to effectively deal with SLAPP cases and for lawyers to better represent their clients in court. And with also the main goal of promoting a unite front across Europe. So over these 2 years, we have worked to 3 main specific goals: to identify and connect lawyers likely to be involved in SLAPP defense, to increase the capacity. Our target at the beginning was from 10 to 20 lawyers per country, so a total of 110 to 120 lawyers. And of course, design, implement, and continuously update the first anti-SLAPP curriculum, cross-country curriculum. So I'm pleased to say that our project exceeded the original expectations. We were able to foster anti-SLAPP legal networks at local level. Later, my colleagues in the last section and I will explain you and provide some information more on the local context. And on that point, I think some countries have something to say. We were able, as I was saying, to foster these networks among the legal experts that supported us in the implementation of the project. We have here today 2 representatives of this group of legal experts. Their name and their contacts are available on our webpage. And of course, the trainees that we were able to reach and train, but also all the other stakeholders. They are not directly targeted by our project, but we involved in a way or another in our activities. So representative of NGOs, trade unions of journalists, bar associations, judicial institutions, and so on. So we are very happy that we set the basis, I guess, for new networks of different stakeholders that can help moving forward the anti-SLAPP defense. We are very proud to say that we organized 25 workshops, interactive, some workshop in the hybrid formats, another in person, and we trained. That's the big results. We almost doubled the maximum target. We train 367 lawyers in all 11 countries, and of course we created the first anti-SLAPP curriculum as promised. Also, we decided to put some extra effort in trying to reach future legal professionals, so target that are not directly future legal profession. They were not our primary target, and we were able to organize 20 lectures. I think there are a couple of lectures that will be done in the next few weeks. So it's not like the final number, but it's a big one. We receive a big interest. We detect a big interest among the students and trainee lawyers, and we are very happy because we consider extremely important to raise awareness about SLAPP among the future legal profession in general, not only lawyers, but there were people involved, for example, in governance, future judges. And so it's something that we consider really important. And then we also organize other extra events with the organization outside the countries of our consortium. We're able to organize, for example, a virtual training with the European Young Bar Association with young lawyers from other countries. So we received interest from organizations outside the 11 member states where the project has been implemented. Here you can have, there is a map after that slide. Okay, just to have an idea of the number that we reach in each country, it's something that I will mention later, but you can consider, of course, that we are speaking about 11 different countries with different size, different amount of lawyers, different social, cultural environment, different SLAPP scenario, and we are very, very proud to see that number on that map. The next slide will be more on the profile of our trainees. We conducted a survey. According to our survey, we train almost female participants. The age is between 25 and 54. And they were mostly human rights lawyers or focusing on environmental cases, lawyers working with independent media or NGOs organization, also representative of association of lawyers or a bar association, state attorneys, lawyers from public institutions. These last categories are outside our target, so they are not counted and the final number of the target reach, of course, but it's worth mentioning that we also had judges. I'm sure that my colleagues later will explain that was really important to have judges on board and to also share the experience. That was the core aspect of our training, to provide a safe space for participants to share their best practice and experiences. In terms of satisfaction, the survey it's explain that we reach our goal, because almost all participants say that they changed their view on the topic after the training, that probably will react differently when they came across the issues in their profession, and they will use, if needed, the content of what they learn in their professional practice. We receive a lot of positive comments, and there is one of the comments is in the slide that you can read it, but they are all positive. So we are very happy that we were able to reach that goal, not only a numerical one, but in terms also of satisfaction. About the curriculum, the curriculum is available on our webpage, freely accessible, and is called the Curriculum Hub. It's based on the legal research that we have been conducted at local level and with our expert, with the support of our expert in different fields of law. And next slide, in the next slides, you can see that is composed by, in the next slide, thank you. It's composed by two sections, a central one and a local one. And the central is applicable to all lawyers, let's say. It provides some insights on the implication between human rights and SLAPP, international primary law, the directive as well, but also some additional modules on financial forensic, for example, strategic litigation, because we consider important to open the mind of our trainees to extra legal strategy that we consider important when it comes to anti-SLAPP defense. And sometimes they are not well equipped in that sense. And so before the challenge, just to, that you know the size of the curriculum, numerically speaking, we have 12 handbooks, 37 video lectures available on our YouTube channel and on the website, 11 case studies. I think it's something that was mentioning. We have conducted case studies at local level, interviewing victims, interviewing lawyers, trying to identify best practices to make some cases visible in some countries. And also, of course, we have a slide presentation that can be used by other trainers, lawyers interested in using our materials. We have disseminated the curriculum through our communities, of course, from the local bar association, organization, online magazine. So it's well spread, and you have here some data about the so far that we were able to have about how many downloads of the curriculum and the page views of our webpage in the section of the curriculum. So we are very proud of the results we were able to achieve, considering the challenges, some of them already mentioned at the beginning. We are speaking of 11 different scenarios in terms of SLAPP, in terms of juridical culture, in terms of level of understanding of the problem. Later again in the last section we'll discuss about the differences between the countries involved. We encounter a basic lack of analysis of SLAPP cases at local level, and that's why there was a long process, the research one and the analysis of the cases, especially in some countries. It resulted in different learning needs and mixed audience sometimes. We had countries who basically lawyers, but not only lawyers, also the other stakeholders we contacted, for example, local bar association, were not aware of the meaning of the word SLAPP and the phenomenon. In other cases, like Poland and Germany, my colleagues will explain it later, the level of understanding was different, was higher. And then also Poland and Germany, again, will explain the need for the Chinese to ensure a safe space for sharing their experience, something that we really need to think about the risk of also training people on this very sensitive topic. And also, I would like to stress some final conclusion and, let's say, recommendation, and I hope it will be useful to have. We really think that PATFox paved the way we really hope, to new initiatives on training lawyers, not only in anti-SLAPP defense, but more generally in human rights legal education, that we think it's really important. And again, not only for lawyers, but for legal professionals. We really hope that if it's not our organization, other organization and the policymakers here will understand that it's important to ensure the continuously updating of the training content, because SLAPP is continually evolving, and so we need to work towards this goal. And as well, it's important to foster exchange of knowledge based on best practice, as we did during our training, and trying to do this cross-country, because it's important that to understand what is happening in other countries. It's something that we, some of the trainings ask for, knowing what is happening in the other countries. And of course, provide a more in-depth, effective human rights education in general, and for all legal professionals, starting from law faculties. So Eleonora probably explain to us later. And of course, and this is my final remarks in the last slides, stress the importance of extra-legal strategies and the collaboration with organizations like the one involved in the PATFox consortium, and the one, of course, that have been victim of SLAPPs. I forgot to say, but it's very important, it's again my final remarks, we involved other people in our training. We involved victims, targets of SLAPP, non-governmental organizations, journalists, trade union of journalists, because we wanted to hear their voice. They put everyone together and create, again, this network. So thank you again. This is the main results of the project. Of course, I'm available to answer all the questions. Next month, probably we'll publish a final report on our webpage with all the main findings and recommendations. And I'll leave the floor to Cristina without further ado, and Julie and Eleonora for the panel discussion.
Thank you very much. We have 20 minutes to answer to a very important, or to discuss a very important topic, the importance of helping and supporting the victims of SLAPPs. And I have together with me in this panel a lot of expertise. And I feel that's very, very important. Julie is a rare bird. She's a human rights lawyer. And one of the things I discovered in Romania is how little number is the number of lawyers who are human rights lawyers in my country. So I'm very grateful to have you here. She's the head of the section of the protection of lawyers at the Institute of the Rule of Law, the Union Internationale des Avocats. I'm not sure my pronunciation is correct. The organization is old. It's almost 100 years old. It was established in 1927 and has members in 110 countries. And the organization supported us in the program, giving us a platform to discuss the program, the results, and the importance of what we are doing together in the conference that was in October in Rome. So thank you very much for this. Also together with us, Eleonora Di Franco. She's a lecturer and a PhD candidate at the International and European Law Department at the Maastricht University. Her PhD project looks at the role of SLAPPs as a specific legal form of obstruction of public participation and legal measures to counter the shrinking of the specific space within the EU legal order. Complicated and complex. You are also developing in your university a SLAPP training, and you are trying to integrate strategic litigation into your curriculum at the university. I think there are a lot of things that we are able to, or we can discuss. And I will start with a very basic question. How are SLAPPs? What is your experience with SLAPPs or anti-SLAPPs initiative? Julie, could you tell us from your long experience with this?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me today. I must say it's very interesting because situations which we say now are covered by SLAPPs is something that we've been working on for years and years at the UIA and more broadly in all the different bodies or institutions I've been working with on what we call défense de la défense, so defense of lawyers being themselves victims of this kind of proceedings. So it's very interesting for me, and I think a number of lawyers, to see now that this is really identified as a proper issue for which there will be a number of new rules and the directive and so on. It's very interesting because then it made me think of the different situation in which we will have lawyers being involved in the SLAPP. And it's not only lawyers being victims of those kind of situation, but it's also, of course, lawyers defending the victims and lawyers on the other side. So lawyers defending the powerful, as they've been called. So I think it's very interesting first to identify those three kinds of positions in which lawyers may be, and then make sure that all those three positions are addressed and hopefully maybe addressed in with connections in between. So as I was saying, we've been working a lot on lawyers who, because they were defending victims of human rights abuses, have themselves been prosecuted for their work as human rights lawyers. So it's like a reaction in chain, because sometimes it can go for lawyers of the victims being prosecuted and lawyers of the victims being prosecuted. So it could go very far into prosecuting people in chain. So this is the first kind of situation we might have. Then as regards lawyers defending victims, just like lawyers defending victims of those kind of situations, of course, the training is very important. But before even the training, I would say that identification of the situation, because as I was saying, now it's defined as a very specific situation, which will have specific regulations and rules. Of course, training is extremely important. Specifically in certain countries, I discovered that in the UK, there's a special regulation to the members of the bar, and specifically to the members who are specifically lawyers who will probably defend big firms and the powerful. So it's very interesting now, speaking about lawyers, to, of course, to work with the bar and to work around the whole question of the code of ethics. Because, of course, when you want to train lawyers, whoever they are, you have to train them on the fundamental rights we're speaking about, of course. So the human right training for lawyers is something that is extremely important, not only for lawyers being human rights defenders, of course. Have more and more lawyers working in tax law or whatever who will tell me it's important to have training in human rights, because of course they may face human rights issue in very different situations. But also here, I see the importance of working on the code of ethics and this whole thing about trying to work, starting from the code of ethics, maybe working on different regulations which would have the code of ethics complemented by a number of specific norms relating to SLAPP. And this is basically what the UK, the solicitors, it's called the Solicitors Regulation Authority, has been doing by issuing a paper which is really saying, okay, this is the number of rules that you are expected to comply with according to the Code of Ethics, but also we add to that a number of specific warnings. And those warnings will be taken into account when we will have to exercise our duty under the Code of Ethics. So it's really important to go. So this, of course, this is just like guidelines, but still, I mean, the regulation authority is going to say, be careful, because this is going to be taken into account. And this goes into, as I was saying, reminding the basic rules of the Code of Ethics, but also saying, okay, now you have to be careful to firstly identifying a situation of SLAPP. So identification is very important because it might not be very clear for a number of lawyers, and specifically depending on the, you know, whether you would be in a common law system, a civil law system, it might be different. So the regulation authority has set a number of criteria. And then once you've identified, you have to take a number of actions, either and even at the very first step of any legal issue, because of course it starts with the advice that you would give to your client, to your powerful client. And so the role of the lawyers might be so important, because it's at this point that the lawyer has to identify a critical situation and see how it could make sure that the client is widely advised and the case would not go further into clear cases of SLAPPs, you know. So from the very beginning, from the moment where you would give an advice to the client up to when you go to court, it's very important to be aware of the different steps into how you advise correctly your clients. So this is really interesting, because then I think there's a huge work to do around this this question of how would you interact with the obligations that lawyers have in terms of the code of ethics. It's not only being trained on human rights, it's not only being trained on the proceedings to avoid abuses of procedure, but it's also the interaction of how, as a lawyer, you have to comply with a number of duties around the code of ethics, which just leads me to the final points, which is, of course, working with the bars and the international association. Because if, as a lawyer, I would be, of course, much more comfortable defending victims and I would know basically, I think, what to do. But if I have tomorrow a powerful coming to me and I would feel uncomfortable and see something that might go into the wrong direction, I would go to my bâtonnier, to my bar president, saying I can maybe detect some problematic issue here. So again, there's a need, of course, to also train the bars because it might be difficult. It's really, going to the lawyer and saying we have to adopt rules which would have an impact on the code of ethics, on the proceedings rules, and adding a number of rights, like the right to have the case dismissed at the first stage, like damages provided to the victims and stuff. It has a huge implication on a number of procedural rights. So you can't do that without having bars and lawyers really well informed of the situation. It's really critical.
I think that was one of the most heated conversation we had in Romania during the trainings on what's the role of a lawyer in accepting or not accepting a possible SLAPP, and that obligation to go and disclose or to say that a fellow lawyer is part of a SLAPP. And I think this is a very important topic to look further. I would go now to Eleonora to ask you again about what did you find in your research? How are the things seen from your side?
Yeah, thank you, Christina, and thank you for the invitation. I think one of the beautiful things about academia is external perspective. We are not bound by these lawyerly duties. We have the opportunity to see different positions within the SLAPP discussion, different perspectives, and to try to bring them all together, which I think is very unique of our position, and it puts us in a very privileged position. And it comes with a number of advantages when it comes to regulating SLAPPs or trying to find solutions that can help us regulate SLAPPs. The first is this bird's eye view perspective on the topic, which can help you see all the different interests, all the different rights, balance them properly, take into account procedural rules as well as substantive rules to come to the best possible solution. And most importantly, I think we have the opportunity to educate. And to educate in particular students, which are to become the next generation of legal professionals. And I think this is really the most important thing that we can do in our position as academics, as lecturers, teachers, educators. It's to snip the problem at the bud by starting them young. So to start educating on legal ethics, SLAPP awareness, and how a lawyer is to behave in that situation already from a bachelor level. And this is something that we are trying to do already a little bit at Maastricht University. We've been working for the past year or so, also a lot thanks to the work that you've put together with the PATFox curriculum and the case studies, your local curriculum. This has been indispensable for us to put together some form of transversal incorporation into our bachelor and master programs of anti-SLAPP education. So to be a bit more specific, what we've started to do is at the master level, we incorporate within our EU law courses information on strategic litigation, both for and against public participation. And we try to think a little bit together with the students about what is a correct use and what is a misuse of a legal system, of the courts, of the judicial system. And at the bachelor level, we work more on legal ethics, So thinking a little bit more fundamentally about lawyerly duties and what those should be from a normative standpoint. And most recently, as part of the first year bachelor course, we started running a group project for first year students where they are looking at balancing of fundamental rights within SLAPPs, which has been a great opportunity and really eye-opening to see how even already at the very rudimentary level with very little experience about the law, even these first year students are able to grasp the concept and try to come towards a solution. And hopefully this can be the first generation of lawyers where we don't have to go out there and train them later at the later stage about what the SLAPP is, right? So hopefully they already come into the profession that they already know what the SLAPP is and how they are to behave if they encounter one, both from the perspective of the defendant and the claimant. Now, of course, this position as a privileged university educator also comes with some disadvantages that I find important to stress, and this is where the role of PATFox, I think, really comes in. It's very easy for academics to fall into this university bubble. All right, so this idea of we live in an ivory tower and we are completely disconnected from what is actually happening on the ground in reality when it comes to SLAPPs. We can very easily lose track of what is it that victims really need and what lawyers and judges also need to be able to identify and to combat SLAPPs. And I think this is really what the legacy of PATFox will be. I think it is this online curriculum, these local trainings that you've put together have been, at least for me, and I think also for my colleagues that are working together with me on this SLAPP curriculum at Maastricht, fundamental to really understand what is going on and what victims and lawyers really need. So it's really helped us stay grounded on what the priorities should be when we are educating the future generation of legal professionals. So yeah, in the interest of time, I will stop there. But I did want to say thank you to everyone who has contributed to this project. And hopefully we'll be able to pick up the slack also from the side of universities and to start putting in also our input into this discussion.
Thank you very much. We still have some time, so I will nudge you with some more questions. I feel, and I would come back now to Julie to ask her about this perspective of going even younger. So continuous education, it's important, but looking first at the students. What's your experience with that, or what's your take on talking with students from the first year of university?
I must admit I don't have much experience with the student on SLAPP specifically, but the discussions we have would cover similar situation, of course. But it's always interesting to see to discuss with young students the different perspective they might have on the work of a lawyer on one side or the other. So it's also the whole discussion on how would you see your role as a lawyer on the side of the victims and as a lawyer on the side of the powerful, as we said. We are saying quite similar situation in the cases of mass violation of human rights by legal entities, right? The whole question of corporate social liability raises the same kind of situation where we have lawyers defending the big ones, going against victims of mass crimes and going into trying to just destroy any possibility for them to speak out and to claim that they have their right because they're a victim of mass violation of human rights. But I'm training in two, especially in two universities in France. And this is something that I'm starting really to address. But again, specifically on the side of what it means for you to be a lawyer. So, young people always would, especially in rights courses, would tend to go on the side of the victims and be really I don't know, engage in discussions on the side of the victims. But for me, it's very important also to try to identify those who would, for example, maybe enter big firms where they would be just facing this kind of situation, and having them be sensibilized to this kind of situation and having a dialogue between the two, because that's really important also. The thing is, as lawyers, whether you're on one side or the other side, you're supposed to remain, loyalty and respectful of the other party. And this is something which is really important, is to try to keep the dialogue between the two parties, because I really think it might be a way to avoid this kind of situation. So it's both trying to sensibilize them to the issue, but also to what it is to be a lawyer who does his job properly, respecting the ethics of a lawyer, which are also to be able to hear the other party and to be sensitive to what the other party has to say when you are defending one of the two sides.
Thank you very much. And I while listening to you, I was thinking that in general, for us as NGOs, is easier to go and teach the people or discuss with the people that have the same ideas like us. And we are preaching again to the wrong choir. But this conversation with maybe the students or the lawyers who may think differently. Is important also, but we had a problem, and not only Romania, in a lot of the countries in the program. If we invite to our trainings the lawyers from the other side, wouldn't we give them the munition to attack or to do better their wrong ways? What's your perspective on this? How do you deal with this?
Yeah, well, that's why it has to be done smartly, of course. But I'm always thinking that the dialogue is a way of you really, it was like I had again to go on a case of commission of mass crimes and violation of human rights. I was working with lawyers for the victims, and at one point we decided to go to see the lawyers of the other side, a big company. And again, we had the same thought that would be, of course, we don't want to disclose any of our strategy and stuff like that, but you can't always stop the dialogue, right? When you see that, you can feel that the lawyer on the other side is going to use what you're saying against you. But this is experience again. But I think always starting venues for dialogue is always a good point. Then you can see where it goes, and if it doesn't go well, then you can stop. But I think it's really important, because so many young lawyers are, they're entering those big law firms, and they have no idea. And when you talk with them, they just realize how important it is to have a view on the other side, to understand the things properly, to see that it's not all black or white. There's another way of seeing things, and especially when they're young. That's when they have to be trained, because sometimes truly it is too late for the lawyers. You can't.
Yeah, yeah, indeed, it does seem, but maybe that's again from our internal perspective, that the more we spread awareness about SLAPPs, the more loopholes start to pop up, and the more alternative ways of slapping people start to pop up, right? And I think a good example of that is the increasing incidence of GDPR-related claims in the EU. Used to silence journalists and human rights defenders, which is a SLAPP technique that to a large extent falls outside of the scope of the current directive as it stands, being a more administrative measure. And this is very problematic, right? And more and more new legal bases to SLAPP victims will start to pop up, I think, as we raise awareness of the different techniques that claimants are using to chill victims of SLAPPs. But at the same time, I think that's just that's not to say that we shouldn't be talking about this and we shouldn't raise awareness of all these different case studies and practical ways that claimants are using to slap human rights defenders. I think it's just perhaps a matter of reshifting or including more of a focus on the normative, more theoretical elements of what characterizes a slap, rather than focusing too much on the specific legal basis, the specific remedies within a certain legal basis. So just a matter of including the theoretical characteristics of a slap in a more non-exhaustive manner, rather than listing out all the possible ways that can be used to slap individuals. But
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have 4 minutes, so I will try to stay on time. And my final question is, and you started to discuss about this a little bit earlier, the legacy of the program. So we are at the end of 2 years colossal work, I would say, and I think Alessia deserves a statue, not only a prize, for making us work together and build that amazing line of resources and things. From your external part, what would be the legacy? What we can build starting in the future with this program?
I think PATFox has done an excellent job at being the first kind of building block towards bridging civil society and academia. And I think what comes after is going to be in a large part also in our hands as the academics. And it's going to be a matter of taking on all the input that you have given and putting that into practice in education. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. We've started doing that. Obviously, Maastricht is a drop in the ocean if you think about all the law graduates that are pumped out of the system every year globally. But hopefully more universities will start following suit. We use the PATFox materials within our education, our curricula. I think there's a lot of very good methodological foundations that you have put in place, especially with the local curricula, that could be expanded and complemented with other member states, and obviously also within the 11 member states covered by the project as the situation evolves. So I think the foundation is there. It's just a matter of continuously working on it, and I think that's the most important part.
Well, I think what you've done at the Rome Congress with the how you explain the SLAPP, and I think it was something that many lawyers discovered. Not that they hadn't been facing the same sort of situation in itself, but seeing that now there's, as I was saying, it's really identified with special tools and stuff like that. So it's really important, but I would say it's just beginning. So much to be done. And it's so important now, as I was saying, to reach out to the bars, international organizations and stuff like that. So there's so much to be done on the side of lawyers. It's really important that it goes on, and I hope we'll have other opportunities to collaborate with the UIA, definitely. And the Bar of Brussels, I hope, will be also one day maybe adopting regulations like the solicitors have done in the UK.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your input and the insights that you brought as part of the panel. I think we are in time for
Yes. Thank you very much. Really. Yeah, I'm quite surprised that we are respecting the time. You have to leave.
Yes.
Thank you again.
Thank you for having me. Good luck. And if there's something you want to change on the newly, and I'm sure you will. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can move forward with the last section, I think the most interesting one, with some detail from the local context. We'll start with Maria, because Maria needs to leave very soon, isn't it? You have a PowerPoint presentation. Yeah, that's there. Yeah, you should be able to see on the screen in maybe 2 minutes.
Yeah. No, I think Gabi is in charge
Yes.
of.
Here you go. From Cyprus University of Technology, Cyprus.
I'm just going to go through very quickly on what we've done in Cyprus. On the second slide, please. Just to look at where we started, where Cyprus was not well aware of SLAPP, if you like. There was one particular incident of a journalist who was forced to leave the country because of what he wrote, basically, and he's now living abroad. That case is still pending in court. The milestones of what we have achieved in this particular project. The next slide, please. But it came, it was very helpful, if you like, for us when the Justice Commissioner, Reynertz, arrived in Cyprus in May 23, and he advocated that all lawyers ought to look towards the SLAPP proposal or the SLAPP directive and implement it. Next slide. In Cyprus, we organized 2 workshops. I should say that the Cyprus Bar Association was very welcome to our invitation. They gave all the participants credit hours, if you like, for their continuing professional development, and that helped us along. They also provided the room, the meeting room for our workshop. So we organized 2 workshops in November 22 and in June 23. Thank you. And 2 lectures were also organized. One lecture was organized at the biggest law firm during their lunch break, and they wanted Mr. Economou, the lawyer who was appointed on the SLAPP project for us, to train them during their lunch break and to be informed on what SLAPP is all about. And as Eleonora mentioned, and because I'm also from the academia, we figured that we should bring along the students since we trained the lawyers. So we contacted the Journalist Association and the Cyprus University Law Student Association, and we organized a lecture, or you might say it was a half-day seminar where 2 professors from the university spoke on human rights and the lawyers' rights and the journalists' rights. They discussed cases that were heard in the European Court, and Mr. Economou also presented the proposal of the directive on the SLAPP. So if you like, this was the capstone where we not only trained the lawyers, not only trained the journalists, the law alumni and the student journalists and the student, the upcoming students of the Cyprus University. So thank you. The next slide. So what was the impact achieved in Cyprus? We managed to raise awareness and build capacity for lawyers, for public servants. We had a couple of public servants who were following the commissioner's push, if you like. They wanted to know about SLAPP. So we also trained journalists and the law students. The Cyprus Bar Association, as I mentioned, embraced the training and offered continuing professional development credits. We had 13 media outreach. We managed to reach our goal of training the lawyers. We trained also the law students and journalists. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. We can move to Philip Wisting from Blueprint for Free Speech, Germany. I don't know if Jasper wants to jump in as well. Maybe we have time if you want to add something.
We'll see. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't bring any presentation, and I'm quite glad to not have to be compared to Maria's very inspiring slides in that regard. And I will try to give you all an idea about my work with a few words. So when I started my work as the coordinator of the PATFox program in Germany, the debate regarding SLAPPs in my country was not really developed. I think, something I think many of us share as an experience. As the largest member state of the European Union, Germany is, I would even say, lulled into a sense of security on this issue, with many actors tirelessly stating that Germany has a particularly well-fitted judicial system and has not a problem with SLAPPs at all. Coordinating PATFox in Germany showed me otherwise. Thanks to a terrific network of legal experts and affected actors, such as journalists, environmental activists, and labor unionists, and those fighting for these actors affected by SLAPP, we were able to not only gain valuable insights into the SLAPP problem, which is a problem in Germany just as well as elsewhere in the European Union, but also to establish strong ties to those fighting for freedom of expression and developing a sense of pan-European solidarity. I want to thank the excellent lawyers and highly committed PATFox Germany trainers, Dr. Jasper Prigge, who is present with us today, and Dr. Nadine Dienig. It is thanks to these two marvelous legal experts and to the support of Professor Justin Barthet also mainly that we were able to conduct our PATFox training sessions, providing German lawyers in the field of freedom of expression with valuable insights into the European debate, with local procedural knowledge, and also with a sense of pan-European solidarity. And that is really one of the cornerstones also of our project, particularly in Germany, where this whole discourse about Germany has not a problem with SLAPPs is so strong. We always try to state that if SLAPP is a problem for a civil society in any European country, it is also a problem for the civil society in Germany. So even on that point, this argument that it doesn't work, regardless of whether it is perceived as a particular problem in the national German context or not. Providing a safe enough environment for our trainings was our biggest challenge. We had this aspect also on the panel, while realizing PATFox in Germany. This led to PATFox Germany trainings being more narrow in terms of numbers, but very deep in terms of training. And it has been a well-received strategy to respond to well-founded concerns regarding the potential undermining of efforts to strengthen the anti-SLAPP community in Germany by those who actively file SLAPP lawsuits. And that led to selecting the participants of our PATFox trainings carefully, keeping those lawyers out who don't hold back to publicly delegitimize or even ridiculize anti-SLAPP efforts. Apart from that, we were able to publish a local PATFox curriculum for German lawyers, of which there's already a second edition by now, to organize inspiring lectures at leading German universities, setting up a skilled and motivated legal advisory board with other experienced lawyers, supplementing Jasper, Nadine, and Justin's expertise, and getting actively involved within the German anti-SLAPP community. Gaining the trust and taking on the coordination of the German anti-SLAPP coalition, consisting of actors from legal, journalistic, environmental activists, and labor unionist backgrounds, was one of my greatest privileges in the past months, and I'm looking forward to staying actively engaged and realizing effective project with this coalition partners in the future, especially with a view to the upcoming phase of national implementation of the European Anti-SLAPP Directive. We applied for some government funding of a national advisory center for those affected by SLAPP in Germany, and just heard from the German federal government commissioner for culture and the media. Things are looking promising. We just have to hope that the German government budget will not be affected by any further turbulences, but we're optimistic on that regard. My special thanks go out to Blueprints, Soledad Dreyfus, and Naomi Colvin, whose reliable advice and support has always been very important to me, and to Alessia Schiavon and all of my PATFox colleagues here in the room, without whom the whole project would just be unthinkable. Thank you all very much, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip and Jasper. Okay, we can move to Bulgaria with Yana.
Yeah, hi
Media
everybody.
Development Center.
My name is Yana Peovska from the Media Development Center in Bulgaria, and very pleased to be here at the end of our 2 years journey that proved to be very successful and also to be very challenging, I believe. So that is why, I mean, surely we will all say that we did a great job, which is absolutely true, and we did a great job. This should be just the beginning of a very long process in the future, but I really want to start with the challenges we had, because this is something that we should think of and build our future plans on the field on that. So especially in Bulgaria, so there was a big interest towards the activity of the projects, especially the trainings and workshops for authorities and lawyers. But we found out that one of the big challenges from the Bulgarian professionals is actually identifying the swap cases. The other thing that we observed is some of the participants in our trainings actually were aware of the directive, but really needed more in-depth discussion on how the mechanisms provided should be implemented and regulated on national level. So the EU level and the national level was a kind of challenge, because it was still not, and it is still not set up according to the legislation. We couldn't actually serve all of the attorneys and lawyers that wanted to get into the trainings, because when we finished the second one, we had many requests of other people wanted to be part of it. Unfortunately, we couldn't provide that for them. We hope that we'll have future opportunities with future projects on that. We managed to set very good partnerships with the Sofia Bar Association, with the Plovdiv Bar Association, with the High Bar Sofia Association, with the High Bar Plovdiv. Plovdiv is the second biggest city in Bulgaria. And we feel the miss of covering most parts of the countries. I mean, many other small towns where actually the professionals have less opportunities and chances to be able to upgrade professionally and be into this kind of information form that we managed to provide for Sofia and Plovdiv attorneys. The lectures in the university that we conducted, 2 of them in the Sofia University, also were very successful. We could absolutely frankly say that this is a completely new field from the students. I mean, the law students have no idea of what SLAPP is and what kind of future professional, road and path for them it could be. But they were very interested in that. So I believe that a lot of work should be done in the academic area, and that it will prove to be very successful in some years, because the young people, this generation, Z generation, they're quite motivated of doing, something that is really useful for the society, for the people. I mean, their mind setup is a kind of, they want to be useful. So I think that this field would be a very good road for a lot of them. What else? Just okay. So we did what we did. It was quite successful, and I just want to finish with some good news for Bulgaria. So after the release of the research actually commissioned by the European Parliament on swap cases in the European countries, it came out in November last year that Bulgaria is among the most the countries with most cases, SLAPP cases in EU. After Spain and Italy and Greece. But anyhow, like out of 47 cases registered in the European Union, at least 5 are Bulgarian. So this was in November. But then this month, in January, a very good month for, anti-SLAPP activities in Bulgaria. Just 2 weeks ago, the Sofia City Court rejected the claim of one big company. This is the biggest SLAPP case in Bulgaria from the last year, a claim for 1 million level, which is half a million euros towards media. So the Sofia City Court rejected the claim of the company towards the media as unfounded. So, of course, this is very good news, very well covered in Bulgaria. So the SLAPP topic is now really on the top of it, which is very good for all of us. And also, just a week ago, the first working expert group settled in the Ministry of Justice happened, and it was discussed and it was announced that some expedited review of SLAPP cases will be done in Bulgaria. Procedural safeguards to protect defendants in these cases, opportunity for lawyers to provide free defense in proceedings for journalists, activists, NGOs, etc. And these and other possible legal decisions in the Code of Civil Procedure and the Law of Advocacy will be discussed, and specific legislative proposals will be prepared, presented to the Council of the Rule of Law and to the European Commission, and the texts are expected to be ready by mid-February. This is the fastest ever process happened in Bulgaria. So let's see in 2 weeks. So that's how I want to, to finish. Good news, are always welcome among such a problematic sphere we have been working for the last 2 years. SLAPP.
Thank you, Jana, also for sharing this good news, marvelous news. Let's hope for the best, and we can move to Hungary, Sandor.
Yeah, thank you, Alessia. Yes, like a year ago when we had our first event here at the European Parliament in the framework of the PATFox project, in our panel we discussed how to implement anti-SLAPP activities in a difficult external environment. I need to tell you that the environment hasn't become any better since then. Probably just the opposite. At the same time, I have to tell you that we managed to reach the goals of the project in Hungary, and I would like to emphasize that in the country we worked with a prominent human rights lawyer, Bea Bodrogi, who is also a member of the EC expert group working on anti-SLAPP initiatives, and I think it was very beneficial to work with her. Last year she was at the event with me. This time we are here with Tamás Jambrisko, who is the new director of the Center for Independent Journalism, which is we are a media development organization, and as you know, we are the partner. We have been the partner in this project. So as I mentioned, we managed to reach the goals. Obviously, we developed all the resource materials, which are very useful for lawyers, but also for media professionals. We had 2 successful workshops. We also organized university lectures. And on top of that, we also had a public event on SLAPP with the participation of human rights lawyers. This event was webcast. The video is available on our website, and it was widely disseminated. Also, we supported a podcast episode on SLAPP, which was disseminated via a community radio station affiliated by the largest Hungarian university, which is offering legal and journalism programs. So, so as I mentioned you, we have been operating in a rather difficult environment, which is characterized by media capture by the states, and there is quite a bit of, I mean, there is a wide variety of tools which can be used for media and the civil sector to influence, to have a chilling effect on these sectors. So sometimes it's not very easy to organize projects, and now there is a new so-called sovereignty protection law which may be used against media and civil society organizations if they receive foreign funding. So it has a chilling effect on the overall environment. And the way we managed to overcome this and face this challenge and managed to recruit very good, high-quality participants for our trainings for lawyers was that we collaborated with two like-minded organizations. One is the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union, which operates a network of lawyers offering pro bono services to media outlets, NGOs, including victims to SLAPP. So we work with them very, very closely. And our other partner was the Hungarian Europe Society, which is promoting European values. It's an association, and among their members, there are many, many lawyers and journalists as well. And I think it was quite good for the project because with these partners, we developed a common ground for future activities. Now we have the resources, we have a pool of trained trainers, we have a pool of trained lawyers, and I think that gives us good opportunities that creates good capacities to work on anti-SLAPP issues in the country. And thank you for your cooperation, and we are very glad we could work together in the framework of this consortium. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sandor, for giving us an idea also of the context that you faced and that you still face in your country. I realize I skipped Sania, sorry, from the agenda. So Sania from Croatia, go. Thank you.
Thank you. So GONG held 2 workshops for 20 practicing lawyers and 2 lectures for law students. The third one will be held today by our Vanja Juric, who's also a member of the European Commission expert group on SLAPPs. Unfortunately, she was unable to come here today. The majority of the lawyers agreed that they had little or no knowledge at all on SLAPPs or experience whatsoever. And there was only one attorney that was representing a SLAPP victim at the time. And one judge, it was also his first SLAPP ever, and only one judge that had been conducting a research on SLAPPs. And when it comes to judges, we actually had 4 of them, and even one judicial advisor. One of the problems regarding SLAPPs in Croatia is that we basically have only 2 attorneys that deal with SLAPPs, and persons from the entire country come to them. So this is one more reason why lawyers must be more educated on SLAPPs. And this was also confirmed by SLAPP activists and journalists that participated at our second workshop. And they all mentioned 2 names as their legal representatives, and one of them was our trainer, of course. The Ministry of Culture and Media also hosts similar workshops, but as far as we know, it's only for judges, so lawyers are left out. Our local curriculum was disseminated also via press release, and it resulted actually in a high media coverage. And GONG, which already had a reputation for being one of the pioneers of the protection of freedom of speech in Croatia, has been also recognized for its advocacy on countering SLAPPs. A general conclusion from the workshops and in the media and everywhere is that there should be more education, as well as political will to counter threats to freedom of expression. But in Croatia, we may have a problem with that. In about half an hour, there will be a protest organized by the Croatian Journalists Association against the proposal of the amendments of the Criminal Code, which will introduce the new criminal act of unauthorized disclosure of content of investigative or evidentiary action. This addresses the information leakage in the non-public phase of the criminal proceedings. So earlier, leaking information in this stage was not allowed, but it wasn't criminalized. This is actually how the public got to know about corruption in the government, which is not rare in Croatia. So persons punished for leaking information, risking up to 3 years in prison, will be those who are part of the procedure. So judicial officials, civil servants, defendants, defense attorneys, witnesses, expert witnesses, and interpreters. The media, who are actually those who publish this information, will be left out, as the Prime Minister himself promised. The Prime Minister also said that this proposal was created with the aim of protecting the presumption of innocence, the right to privacy, and the right to a fair trial. and that the other countries also have this kind of criminal offense, but we found out that that's not exactly true, so correct me if I'm wrong. And all of this came after his initials leaked during the investigation for high corruption of a minister and state secretary from his government. And this, of course, was widely criticized by legal experts, the media, parliamentary opposition, everyone. And even the Supreme Court said that there should be no crime if there was public interest for leaking information. And also, they are of the opinion that this does not leave the journalists actually carefree, because they could potentially be accused as accomplices. And of course, to find out where the information leaked from, they will first come to the one who published the information, which is, again, the journalist. And this means serious invasion of private correspondence and will result in a chilling effect, because in Croatia, a country with a high level of corruption, no one would know that high-ranking government officials were under investigation for corruption. But in an unlikely turn of events, after pressure coming from everywhere, the Minister of Justice said yesterday afternoon that they will add that in case that it was a matter of public interest to leak information, there will be no crime for leaking information, and the journalists will be explicitly left out as one of the possible offenders. So this is still fresh. We will see what will happen. But who will determine what is public interest? Judges and state attorneys, as they say. But a fun fact about that, Croatian judges are notorious for slapping, and the European Court of Human Rights even had a thing or two to say about that. And the government now proposed a new state attorney, Judge Ivan Turudic, who had a 7 years long slap that ended last year against a journalist in the civil procedure, because there were, of course, two procedures. The journalist was sentenced to about 12,000 euros, while Turudic claimed initially about 23,000 for mental pain caused by being compared to a Serbian war criminal. And in the criminal procedure, the journalist was sentenced to 30 daily allowances, which is about 1,000 euros. But the procedure was terminated because of the expiration of the period of limitation. The appeal court overruled the first instant court decision 3 times because of serious procedural errors. So the whole process lasted for 7 years, and that man will be the new state attorney general. And Judge Turudic also supports the previously mentioned amendments in their original form. He was the member of the working group. So this is our current political climate. And in light of all of this, we are a bit afraid of the future of freedom of expression and journalist work in Croatia. But as far as GONG concerned, we will do whatever it takes to defend it. Thank you.
What an update on Croatia. Very interesting, to know what is happening now and how difficult it is becoming to protect this basic freedom. So thank you again, Gong, for all the work they are doing, Sania and your colleagues. So we now move, according to the agenda, to Anna for Poland. Press.
Thank you. So there was a huge interest in Poland among lawyers about SLAPPs because of the particular climate characterized by the rule of law backsliding and extreme polarization of political discourse. So initially, when I approached attorneys and legal counsels to be trainers, they were reluctant because although they had many decades of practice, they thought that they didn't defend in SLAPP cases. But it turned out that actually also for our trainers, we had those who were experts in criminal law, in media law, and in civil law, that they discovered actually what this practically mean to them, and that indeed, yes, they have defended in such cases. So we encountered challenges in selecting participants to our project because after publicly announcing it, we received 70 applications, and many of them were from certain law firms that are working for the previous government of Poland, and that they were actually responsible for filing what we consider SLAPPs against civil society activists and NGOs. So this created this debate whether we want to bring together those people and discuss, but then eventually we considered that it's better to have safe space for people to really share their knowledge, their best practices. And we invited people who are at various stages of their professional life. So from junior lawyers to heads of in-house, lawyers in big media companies, or the president of the Warsaw Bar Council, or even a retired judge of the Constitutional Tribunal of Poland. And this enabled a very practical discussion. So what is interesting is that lawyers wanted to create a checklist how to defend in SLAPP cases, what sort of things communicate to the judge, because obviously when the SLAPP is launched, sometimes the contours of the case, the facts are presented in a way that would not explain that this is indeed a SLAPP. So that in the checklist, it is to explain a broader context. Who is the slapper? Who is the defendant? What are their social roles? If there were other lawsuits brought by the same person against certain group of people or the same individual, and especially what is the claim, what compensation would the slapper expect, and also to explain, because in the context, the classical context of Western European democracies, it's usually business that slaps, and in Poland that was also the case of government or government proxies or NGOs that are supportive of the government or could be linked with it. So that also creates this whole broader environment that needs to be addressed and presented to the court, because the court is not always aware, or we would think that the court would be aware, but it's in reality it's not always the case. People are not following news all the time, or not all of them. And it was also really important to just bring people together, to network them, and they were representing various defense against various attempts to silence people who speak in defense of women's rights, LGBT rights, environmental protection, climate protection, the rule of law, etc. So all those major things. Also tenants' rights against big business, construction business in cities in Poland. And I felt that many of them knew each other, but also we wanted to expand our pool of participants from outside of Warsaw. So there were also people who were at the beginning of their careers, and that was really important to them, as I heard. Plus, they could share some problems that they encounter being defenders in SLAPP cases. So, for instance, they were discussing the need to get psychological support, and some of them are actually getting it because they have received grants from some NGOs, but then they discussed the need to introduce maybe some structural changes in the bar associations across Poland, so that psychological help is also provided. And the importance of our project is also highlighted in the fact that the foundation that organized it is also the publisher of a popular online portal, Okopres. And we wrote a lot about the anti-SLAPP directive, the proceedings, but also lawyers were, realistic about whether the draft directive will be eventually the law, the binding law. So they were also discussing what is already available in national legal frameworks. So I think that this is a really good start for the Polish legal community. They were also saying that it's useful for them to actually have the term of the SLAPP to include it in their defense, in their argumentative strategies. And they want to learn about SLAPPs from other countries. So really the curriculum was something important to them, because they can compare and see, and there are various elements that are transplanted or copied from those jurisdictions. So thank you for this opportunity. It was a fantastic opportunity. We got really good feedback from the participants, and I'm looking forward to more. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for again sharing the difficulties that you faced. As in Germany, there are common point on the need to provide, as I said before, a safe space. And it was interesting to see the different position, the need for a safe space, and the need for maintain a sort of dialogue among lawyers. So we will move to Slovakia with Ivan. It's your turn.
Hello, my name is Ivan Godarski. I'm coming from Memo 98 NGO. We are dealing with questions of freedom of expression since establishment of our NGO, which is 25 years ago. To put a bit word to Slovakia, to our situation, I don't want to go into all the details, but there are some differences to what I heard and to what we can see. For example, just comparing to what Anna said, I had the privilege to be part of OSCE ODHR election observation mission in the last parliament election in Poland. And it was very visible that throughout our meetings with the media outlets and the journalists, issue of SLAPP was really very present. People really knew what we are speaking about. We had a discussion with Gazeta Wyborcza, the most important critical outlet in Poland, devoted specifically to the SLAPP. Specifically, we spoke with the lawyer of Gazeta Wyborcza discussing it, how much this is really burdening their feelings and their work, actually. Comparing to Poland, in Slovakia, we're in a different situation. I think we managed to get what we wanted to. We organized actually three workshops, two for lawyers, one in Bratislava capital and one in the second part, in second most important city in Košice, which is in the eastern part of Slovakia. Plus we organized one workshop only for NGO and for media representatives. Plus we organized one faculty again in one university, and we are planning still to do two more. So from that formalistic perspective, we achieved the goals. And I think we also achieved that the discussion or the matter of SLAPP is now in a public discourse. But we cannot really say that this is really known to the public or even to the professionals. So comparing to situation in Poland, maybe Malta, maybe in Croatia, when this is really being discussed and it's something really common, I would say. In Slovakia, it's still, to me, more in the corridors within the professionals. We had very good cooperation with Slovak Bar Association. They helped us organize workshops. They are very cooperative. They send the information about it through their channels. So actually, the more than 5,000 attorneys in Slovakia got the information, and they will be sending the final document, final curriculum. But when we discuss it really with the lawyers, it was for many of them, even for those who are interested, who are actually working in the subject, for them it was quite unknown. One thing is that how we sort of frame it, that it's institute called SLAPP. For many, they actually knew the processes which are abusive against the media, against the NGOs, not calling them SLAPP per se. But in fact, very many of them didn't know about the issue. And for me, and this is very important, and we, from our perspective, we wanted to open that chapter, even for that was not really intended at the beginning by the project. We also wanted to include more side of judges. We wanted to get into that part of the legal field. We haven't managed, partly also because I don't know how much you're following the situation in Slovakia now. There is a really big discussion with the very controversial legal reform introduced by the new government and concerning the abolishment of the special office of special prosecutors to be abolished. And now there are on a weekly basis thousands of people protesting this move. It seems that the coalition doesn't seem to be bothered by that, and they are going in the direction to abolish it. Despite that there are no solid arguments to my view on that. We'll see, because the president, but she will definitely go to Constitutional Court. But not going into the details of that, the judges for us are kind of a crucial element why the SLAPP or why this type of lawsuits are actually still effective in the environment of post-Soviet countries. Let's put it that way, despite the fact that we are out of that period 30 years. Still the mentality is there, still the judges being educated in a different system, and the judges which are getting into the system are sort of still part of that kind of hierarchy. So I think that's a discussion which should be open, and the sooner we do it, the better. Unfortunately, we haven't managed during this project, but that's our ideas, regardless whether there will be any continuation, formal project or not. I think that's the opening line that we would like to do, and gladly, despite the numbers that I mentioned that we fulfilled, I think that the notion of SLAPP is there, so the people already know about it, definitely more than they used to. They're very recognized NGOs dealing specifically with legal issues like Via Juris. There is this investigative center of Jan Kuciak. They're doing excellent job. So altogether, and many others, we are sort of in a networking position, and now also ahead of EP elections, ahead of presidential election, which we have in 2 months. This is also something which is being discussed. So thank you very much for all your leadership, for all of you, because for us also it's very important to discuss different approaches. Like, for example, invite the other side or not to invite. We had actually quite opposite strategy. We exactly for the invite everyone is better, despite the fact that they might learn some tactic, because we also think giving other side something of what we think is important, value-based, it actually can sensitivize the other side. They can see things differently. So I think eventually in the long term, this is a strategy we like to run, because the freedom of expression and media as a basic pillar of democracy is important. And the more people are aware of the situation, the important, the better. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ivan, and thank you also for stressing the importance of patrons decided to go for different approaches. Now, at the end, we reached the goal, the same goal in all 11 member states, in all countries, but for different approaches depending on the situation we encounter when we started working on the specific topic that is a SLAPP, and also stressing the importance of involving judges. Unfortunately, judges as law students are outside our target, but hopefully maybe for another project. We have Anushka from Slovenia now.
Hello. I will try to explain in short why it was extremely important for Slovenia that we engage in this PATFox project. SLAPP cases in Slovenia are really widespread, and this issue was not well known among lawyers and at public at large. According to the data of case, the data is from 2022, so 2 years ago. Slovenia ranked as second among 31 another European countries in terms of SLAPP file per capita. So despite this high number of SLAPP, there was very little public discussion, and many lawyers did not recognize this lawsuit like a SLAPP. So within the PATFox project, through online campaigns, workshops, and lectures, I think we successfully increased the public awareness of the harmful effect of SLAPPs. And now more people are aware of what SLAPPs are and why they are detrimental for both the victim and society as a whole. During the project, we organized 2 workshops, both with our trainer, Jasna Zakonšek, a lawyer specializing in media law, and a well-known professor of civil law, Aleš Galić. After the first workshop, we also hosted a panel discussion with Primož Cirman, a journalist and a victim of SLAPP, Đorđe Grbović, a judge in High Court in Ljubljana, and the Secretary of State of the Ministry of Justice, Igor Šoltes, and our trainer, Jasna Zakonšek. We also screened a video message recorded specifically for this event with MIP Irena Jolova. So the idea of this panel discussion was to allow people who are already dealing with SLAPP to share their insight, to speak about their experience. The second workshop was held in physical proximity of the court in order to attract as many judges and lawyers working on the court, because it was crucial for us that judges and lawyers became familiar with what SLAPPs are and that they understand the consequences for the victims. So on the workshop, we also spoke about how it's possible to assist a SLAPP victim with the existing legal framework. Both workshops were successful. We attract many lawyers. At the end, we have very lively debates. Our trainer Jasna Zakonšek also conduct a lecture of the law school, which was organized by the Bar Association of Slovenia. Additionally, on our website, we share a lot of updates related to SLAPPs. We publish a blog explaining what SLAPP is, like in very straightforward manner, and we share articles and news about the project and about SLAPP. So during all this lecture, workshop and public annunciation, we also talk about how important is the adoption of the anti-SLAPP directive, and we stress the importance that Slovenia will implement this directive as soon as possible, and we also talk about how to make it work for the Slovenian context in specific.
Thank you very much for sharing with us your results and the activity you have you carried out. And I will move to Carla. So yeah, I know it will be Christina, but we have to close a little bit earlier. So thank you, Carla.
Hi, yes, thank you. After the publication of the case report, Malta has ranked first in the number of SLAPPs per capita. However, we found that even though there was quite a knowledge or an awareness of SLAPPs, there wasn't the dialogue or the dialogue with the government or with training or with making people more aware of what SLAPPs were. So having said that, during our trainings or the participation in our trainings mainly involved, or the people who came were lawyers who were very well versed on the matter. So there were lawyers who have already cut their teeth on the number of SLAPPs that had been instituted in Malta. So the discussion was less about what SLAPPs are, but more about legal remedies, defenses, and whether or not the directive was addressing those needs, if I could say that. Also, throughout in our trainings, I think what was most innovative was that we invited journalists and editors, and lawyers and journalists sat around the same table to discuss the problems with very varying perspectives of the issue and ways of looking at it. In fact, if I could give some of my minutes to my legal expert who's here, because he has some points he'd like to make specifically on this matter. Also, just as my last point, as I think Eleonora had pointed out, throughout our discussions also, we noticed that because the SLAPP perpetrators, if I could say that, were also so experienced in filing SLAPPs, I keep saying SLAPPs, their methods have become more and more sophisticated. So using less obvious SLAPP cases, but using other legislation as well, like we've mentioned, for example, GDPR and FOIs, which are not really covered by the directive. So I then move swiftly to Michael.
I hate to come last because I hate to bring the mood down, but as part of the training efforts, I come from two fields. I am a practitioner myself, but I'm also training others. And as Carla said, we were met with an audience, particularly of we had all the lawyers over there. I mean, Malta is a small country, and with 20 people, we covered all the lawyers who are working as anti-SLAPP lawyers. The only lawyers who weren't there were those actually perpetrating the SLAPPs. And I think it's important over here, and I'm glad that Miss Ramona is over here to hear this, because the reaction we had from the lawyers shifted. And whereas a year ago we had a presentation with them and we were all very positive about coming up with this effort, the minute the Commission proposal was published, that mood changed. And it changed in the mood of skepticism. And the lawyers were actually asking us, do they actually know what they're talking about? By the time the European Parliament's amendments and the Council amendments came on, I hate to say this, but they laughed it out of the room. because the mood over there, and again, we're dealing with lawyers and we're dealing with a serious problem in Malta. We were not dealing with amateurs, but it was immediately recognized how the proposed directive just doesn't apply to us and cannot, let me not say cannot, is unlikely to work in the circumstances. And therefore, the message I want to portray, I want to bring along is for the European Parliament and particularly for the committee to speak to real people, to speak to people who are really on the ground over there and not to rely so much on reports coming in from second, third, fourth-hand accounts, because this disconnect risks us working in an ivory tower where we're all caught up in our academic bubble, but we are not actually speaking to the people on the ground. The final point I want to make is that when we were carrying out this project, we discovered that Carla and myself are the only two people in Malta right now who are carrying out this work. There is no effort by the government or any other organization in Malta to speak to the people on the ground. So we realized that our information that we were getting from the people attending over there was the raw information which was not coming through in any other source. And this is significant. It means that Malta's representatives on the council, on the commission, come with their own agenda. And that agenda does not match the people on the ground. And I think until we address this communication issue, we are going to go through version 1, 2, 3, and 20 of the directive before we get it right. So I'd say this constructively, but I think it's an important message that I bring along. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carla and Michael, for these remarks on Malta, the special context, let's say, when it comes to SLAPP. We'll say a few words on Spain. I've been informed that we need to leave the room at 11, so 11-ish. So a few words to Spain, and then Romania, and then Ramona, of course, for the closing remarks. I am really happy that you raised the report issue, because despite what you said about the report that was published in November, we have a lot of cases in Spain. When we started the project, SLAPP was completely unknown term. Not the phenomenon, but the term itself was completely new. There were only few articles in the press published about what was going on here in Brussels. It was something very far away from Madrid, the capital city, and the other part of the country, of course. Now the situation has changed thanks to our project, but we are in a similar situation. We are the only one working on the ground, where I tried to set up a coalition of organization, an anti-SLAPP network, not only with lawyers, but also with organization, and doesn't be very easy. But I think the work we have done has been essential, because we were able to identify cases, and especially I think what the main result has been to making them visible. It's what environmental activists told me. Finally, someone is coming and is listening to us. And the other thing that I consider important to stress is also in a couple of occasions and during the workshop, there were two lawyers that realized, well, but I've been SLAPP before. So what happened to me many years ago was a SLAPP. I didn't know that. So I think that's the two main points. There are a lot of things that I could say about Spain, but two final remarks, and then I'll leave it to Christina. The first one, that we attract the interest of other lawyers for Spanish-speaking countries. So I have the opportunity to present PATFox and our activities at the World Human Rights Forum in Buenos Aires, Argentina. This year, and a panel discussion with a former judge from Inter-American Court of Human Rights. So something that is worth mentioning. It's outside the EU dimension, but I think it's interesting to know that people from around the world are actually looking at what we are doing. And the other things that we receive a great interest from, as I said before, from students, from master students, not only from Chinese lawyers, but students are, for example, enrolled in Master in Governance and Human Rights. We actually have a workshop with 72 students. The results were so good that they asked for another lecture this year. And also we have one of the students decided to focus on SLAPP for the master thesis. Again, another thing that's outside our target, but I think it's worth mentioning that what we have done have exceeded again our expectation. So on my side, it's everything. I leave to you, Christina, to close, and then Ramona.
Romania on paper doesn't have a lot of SLAPP cases, and I am always saying that we have cases against journalists. Not all of them are SLAPPs. The problem is that when the journalists are very poor, as like most of the Romanian journalists are, every case you have to go to court may feel as a SLAPP because you don't have the money for the lawyers, you don't have the resources to pay for the fees and for the things that would make you do your job. Another problem in Romania is that we don't have enough lawyers interested in human rights and freedom of expression, media freedom, and all these things that are important for all of us here. So I was always joking, if Diana, the expert in the program, and our lawyer would be kidnapped, most of the Romanian media would run out of a lawyer because she is the main lawyer of the Romanian journalists in cases against them. But for me, the most worrying thing were the workshops for students. I was the one delivering them, and we went outside Bucharest. So we chose two universities that are not in Bucharest. We wanted to get exposed the kids from smaller towns. And I discovered that they don't know anything about freedom of expression, not SLAPPs. They don't understand freedom of expression. They don't understand the balance between private life and all these rights that need to be balanced, and that they really hate media. And they really despise this idea that journalists are important, that civil society is important. And I think this is something that we as NGOs need to look, but also the Commission and the more resources need to be put into the training and raising awareness on freedom of expression and anti-SLAPPs, and Ramona knows that because I'm always telling this. Sometimes the European Parliament and the European Commission needs also to put the money where their mouth is and to invest resources in this type of programs for judges, because it's important, or for prosecutors to understand better how to deal with cases like that, because the countries will not bother to do a lot, or our country will not bother to do a lot on this.
Thank you so much, Christina, and thank you for all of your incredible efforts. I will go briefly through the speaking points prepared with great care and devotion by Gabriel, who is the mastermind of anti-SLAPP legislation and European Media Freedom Act and everything related to free media and freedom of expression in general. I must admit that I do have also a fantastic team that helped along the way, and then maybe summarize a bit and give you my thoughts on various issues that you pointed out rightfully, that we've been confronted with along the way. We're fully aware of things, and we are talking to people. We're also aware of the positions of the government in Malta. We're aware of the fact that in Bulgaria we had investigative journalists arrested for terrorism on the territory of the European Union. We're aware of the situation in Croatia, well aware of it. And in general, when it comes, not to mention Hungary and Poland and Slovakia, we at least here in this room and with those colleagues who worked on the anti-SLAPP legislation and in general on proposals regarding media freedom, listen to the voice of the journalists, activists, associations more than the positions of the governments on this type of topics, which created us significant difficulties with negotiating this legislation, because there you see the position of the government. And this is what the council brings to the table every time. Our great ally in this story was the Commission. Commissioner Vera Jourova really made significant efforts to see this happening, and she was a very fair player, but also an active player, because if you don't push with your own means and connections for things to happen, they don't. And we also had a great ally in the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola. She was also very committed to the topic. She was part of the own initiative report preceding the anti-SLAPP legislation, and we all worked as a team to have an ambitious start. But frankly, this whole story of the legislation started with a tragedy. We have the assassination of Daphne, and basically looking at the numbers, because Gabriel likes numbers a lot, what she had revealed made her inherit basically over 40 abusive lawsuits, she and her family, after the assassination. And I think they're until today dealing with asset freeze and all of the other consequences of SLAPPs. Then the number of SLAPPs have been on the rise. You are all aware of it. Probably the 2022 being the most proliferous year in terms of SLAPPs. Croatia had 951 SLAPPs active back in 2022. 16 open only in 2022. Malta, you've rightfully mentioned it, 44 such new proceedings open in 2022. And this is the highest annual number of SLAPPs since 2017, when 33 SLAPPs were filed against Daphne Caruana Galizia alone. Poland, Gazeta Wyborcza, we are well aware that between 2015 and 2022, being the country's leading independent newspapers, has been targeted with at least 100 SLAPPs. And case revealed that individual journalists remain the most likely targets of SLAPPs, 30%, followed by media outlets, 25%, editors, 12% activists, 10%, NGOs, 5%. Over half of SLAPP victims are related to or work in the media. Therefore, it is for us key to ending SLAPPs, and having legislation in place is key to protecting media freedom and upholding media pluralism. I'm very aware of the fact that the legislation that we have now in place is not perfect by far. It is just the first step. I'm also aware that it covers about 10% of the cases, because we're discussing about the cross-border dimension. We fought hard to have it. Otherwise, there was always the issue of the legal basis that constituted one of the very hot points of conversation. What we have now, and Tiemo probably explained it to you as well, is that we have the definition of what constitutes a cross-border case in the widest possible form that we could negotiate. But I am coming back to some of these thoughts and conclusions along the way, because it has been a number of years. Back in 2017, when we started this discussion, following a tragedy, followed by other tragedies, because we had Jan Kuciak, we had a number of journalists, Greek journalists, Dutch journalists. Lawmakers told us that we are, I don't know, catching flies or something. I mean, we're dreaming the impossible, it was not obvious, even to practitioners at all, that this would and should and could be possible. That being said, I'm fully aware that there's no magical wand that will fix everything overnight. In Malta, it continues. In Croatia, I was listening carefully to your reporting. We already have EMFA hopefully entering into force very soon, not very soon, but soon, which prevents exactly the type of situation that you were referring to in terms of safeguards for journalists and full protection when it comes to their journalistic activities and full protection for their sources when it comes to journalistic activities. They cannot be prosecuted, convicted, arrested, detained, and so on when it comes to journalistic activity. So this is something that we now have not in a directive, but in a regulation of the European Parliament. Do not ask me exactly how we ended up with this safeguards and a strong piece of legislation. It was really hard, but it was well worth it, because now we have a bigger framework for protecting the journalists and activists. Yes, people do not know what SLAPP mean, an anti-SLAPP legislation, and I really see your role together with our role. And when I say our role, I talk about the institutions, the Parliament, the Commission. I think it's very important to continue to talk about abusive lawsuits against journalists, abusive proceedings, unfounded proceedings, and so on, so that people understand more and more the implications on the professional lives of journalists and activists, and as many examples as possible, and training as well. Because I know there are judges and lawyers who really want to do things, but they are afraid that they will, even with early dismissal, and we had a number of discussions with professionals as well on how exactly this will function and whether it is, how far along the proceedings will this ensure that all rights are protected for both parties involved in the trial and so on. We need money for training, and there are very few organizations doing what you do right now, and we need awareness. And Vera Jourova was mentioning Paul Caruana Galizia launched his book in the European Parliament last week. The three of them came to this launching. I was probably one of the most emotional moments that I had since I'm here in the European Parliament. But they came, they are very powerful. You are all very powerful, to be honest. I mean, I have never seen such strength and courage in my whole life. Quite motivated and optimistic in the sense that they would really not give up. And I strongly believe that, yes, you can kill a journalist, but you will never kill his story. And that information, whether we talk about high quality news in the world that we live today, or investigative stories, which were the base of high convictions in Europe. I mean, I think they are 99% of the base of high level convictions that we have. I don't know it, I'm just guessing it, but almost each and every one started with a journalistic story revealing corruption and illegal behavior and abuse coming from politicians or other persons. All of these things are well worth fighting the fight. Now, my fundamental, and we will, and as long as we continue our mandates, I have no idea what 2024 will bring, to be honest. I'm afraid of what it will bring. And we have also a commission and commissioners which are committed to the topic, and we also become more and more aware of the fact that the efforts like yours need to be financed, and projects need to be dedicated for training, professional training, and so on, from EU level as well. I think we will make it. Vera Jourova was mentioning in this event that she started a very active conversation with each and every member state for the recommendation and for national legislation to be adopted. and that she's been actively involved in this, and it will continue this. Will continue these discussions. It really a really sensitive issue that I think we all need to be careful with is how the directive transposes international legislation on the one hand, and on the other hand, how does the national legislation look like? Because for me, I think that I believe that for some it will be also a reason to slip all kinds of provisions that will not protect journalists and activists. On the contrary, they will contribute to abuse. So we need to remain alert and very vigilant. Nevertheless, I think it's continuous effort, but nothing which is serious and well made is easy. And I think this is one of those efforts that we have to make. And when I say we, I'm thinking of politicians, civil society, activists, civic involvement, everything. In the years to come in particular, because there's no other way that we can preserve our democracies. There is simply no other way. And I'm really grateful for your commitment. And also all of the variety of information and the way you reported it, and the fact that you continue, it is a well-learned lesson for us as well. I wish this House had more politicians interested in the topic. There are topics that are catchier and they bring more votes. Nevertheless, we know that this is a crucial one. Just to give you an idea about the dimensions of the issue when it comes to journalists and activists, and the fact that politicians in general do not like that journalists are doing their job. In the AML package that we just finished, the most complicated issue in the directive was access to beneficial ownership registers by journalists and activists. Well, I wonder why. Because we did have a decision of the Court of Justice saying that they limit the access to the BO registers. It was a mess. Nobody knew how to interpret it. I was rapporteur in that file as well. I'm really happy that the Commission wrote his position paper based on what we proposed and what I proposed. And I'm also really happy that we could secure a good deal, and we have good provisions in this legislation for access for those with legitimate interest. And when I say legitimate interest, I speak about journalists, activists, organizations fighting money laundering, professionals, academics, and so on. So this is good. This is really a good, this is an important victory. I mean, we're moving on with several pieces of legislation that are strengthening this frame of access to information and defending public interest. EMFA is also an important step forward. Let us continue. Thank you so much for all of your work. Like I said, really, really grateful for that. I truly believe that those, I would say assholes, but that's not a nice word to say, can be defeated. I do believe that they can be defeated. Thank you.